this time it's very special, 60th anniversary already of Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Professor, from your perspective, how do you look at Xinjiang today from a history point of view, particularly its modern history?
It's, you know that in the 20th century, the first half of 20th century, the Xinjiang region, together with the whole China, is full of the wars and instabilities, a lot of the problems in that region, especially in Xinjiang, because during the time of from 19th century onwards, the imperialism, the foreign intervention, and the civil wars, warlords, and so on and so forth, and also the ethnic clashes were quite serious. Basically, last 60 years Xinjiang is stable, and economy developed quite fast, together with the whole developments of the country.
But at the same time, if you look at the media coverage or information coming from the public domain, one might assume that Xinjiang has been, for some years now, a place overrun by terrorism. Is that really the picture? I know, Professor Wang, you travel to Xinjiang several months every year, especially going to southern part of Xinjiang, where most of the ethnic groups are actually situated. So what do you make of these kind of perception, the outside world looking at Xinjiang?
It's complex. I think the situation is complex. On the one hand, if you look at in everyday life, people enjoy their everyday life as quite normal to some extent. But on the other hand, we have to face the serious reality that the challenges we are facing, like a terrorist attack and certain kind of the ethnic conflicts, and together with this, these were on the one. I think that on the one hand we talk about developments, and on the other hand we talk about the challenges and these issues, and the real issue is that how can put together to think these. On the one hand, why develop as such speed. On the other hand, there were still a lot of problems. So I think that these are linked together.
It is very closely linked, in fact, but without resolving one, it seems that the other side can also having some challenges to take further steps. For example, without development, without the lives of all ethnic groups getting better, there might be potential for further conflict, whether among different ethnic groups or just about the people in Xinjiang compared to the rest of China. And there could also be dampened influence on the economy if this place could not maintain certain kind of stability. So it's a lot of things entangled together. Professor Wang, I know you've been talking to many of the locals, all ethnic groups. What do they think about this seems to be controversial way of solving problems? What can be the way as they see it?
First of all, I think that the Xinjiang issue on the one hand is unique because of the very diversified, multi-ethnic groups living in that region. They live together. But on the other hand, it's general because the contradictions, the conflicts came from the development itself, the process of development. As we, in the inland, in the coastal area, we also have the social inequality, the social differentiation between the poor and the rich, urban and the rural, and also the regional differences. But in the condition of the multi-ethnic area, the regions, these issues sometimes can be translated into the ethnic conflicts because, for example, in Xinjiang, if you look at the economy of Xinjiang, basically I think that we can list 4 main fields. One is oil, gas production. That is mainly the field of the state-owned enterprises production. And the second was like a coal mine and non-ferrous metal production that allowed the private sectors and other sectors into. And the last one was in the urban area, infrastructure, real estate, and so on and so forth. Last one is agriculture and the stock farming. So you look at these different fields, you find that the minority people, to some extent, they are in the not that strong position because the employments or the developments, you needed the support from the government or banking system, you needed the technology and so on and so forth. And generally speaking, the market environment was really based on a certain kind of, for example, linguistic environment. You need to know the Mandarin, you need to know the English, but even for the minority people, they know different minority language together with the Mandarins, but the it's very difficult to reach the level of the sophistication of the communication. So in that sense, the employments, how can we employ the local population, especially for the ethnic groups, it became a big challenge. So that the local people concerned about that.
Professor Wang, correct me if I'm wrong, haven't there been quite a number of a series, I would assume, over the past 60 years, preferential policies toward the ethnic groups. Haven't these been working?
Yes, I think that before the reform, it's because most of the urban enterprises were the public or the collective.
Right.
So at that time, certain percentage or the proportion of the employment was really decided. It's on the policy. But now it's really in the markets. So it's really market activities. So that the employer, whether or not they want to employ more the people from different ethnic groups, it's really based on the whole environment. So that changed. The old policies lost its strength to some extent. Of course, still a lot of this for me is still important for these. But on the other hand, it's also raised some other issues. For example, in the school the system, that you give some credit to the minority, the students, a certain kind of policy. I think it's necessary. But whether or not the local Han Chinese population can enjoy the same treatment, that raised a lot of the issues. So it's a sophisticated issue. On the one hand, you need to give more credit, a certain kind of the policy preferential policy to the minority people, but at the same time, how to deal with the local people. They thought that they are part of the majority, but they also perceive themselves as a minority in there. So it's quite a complicated issue. We need to study on these kind of the new developments.
Are there some good case studies elsewhere in the world that China can draw inspiration on? I'm sure you have studied many of those different cases around the world. But of course, Xinjiang is also a very different picture. We talk about the largeness of this territory, 1/6 of China's overall territory, huge, and also the vast, different kinds of minorities living over there, and so many different cultures. But still, can we maybe draw some inspirations from, and have other countries really been very successful in terms of having a huge diversity of ethnic groups living together, and eventually enjoy peaceful life and rapid economic development? Professor, shed some light on this.
Yeah, I think that there were some experiences in Canada or in other European countries. You can find some experiences, but these kind of issues really based on a certain condition. You cannot simply borrow others' experience to this area. And give you an example, for a lot of people in the southern Xinjiang, these are oasis economy, so the land was limited. So how to develop the certain pattern of the economy, not only based on GDP growth, because you need to consider ecological developments. So that's the big issue. At the same time, these oasis condition was it's a long tradition for the everyday lifestyle. The lifestyle was whether or not we can develop a kind of the mode of developments which fit the environment. It's quite important. At the same time, in the market condition, the more and more migrants, for example, the social, the mobility was intensified the last decades. Of course, the last years, the situation has changed quite a lot. A lot of people migrate out from the southern Xinjiang.
Because of the stability issues,
security issues. But basically, you can see more and more migrants from outside into the urban area. So the rural area remained, most of the majority were the local, the ethnic group, ethnic people, so living there. So certain kind of the differentiation between the urban and the rural there can be translated into the ethnic difference. So that could be, we need to think about what kind of the development model for this. At the same time, when I was in the Kashgar last summer,
in southern part of Xinjiang,
southern part of Xinjiang, I visited several the counties and the regions. I found that the interesting phenomena. Some migrants, they were quite poor peasants from Gansu or from Zhejiang. They migrate there, they work very hard for 20 or 30 years. They became very rich. You can compare the situation of their family economy and with their neighbors. Obviously, you found the sharp comparison. It's not directly came from the support of the government. It's really came from the different lifestyle,
personal
long tradition,
efforts, yes.
and also certain kind of the connection. So for the Han Chinese people, they enjoy certain kind of the let's say the cultural condition or the social connection, and their Mandarin was skillful. They can do the communication and so on and so forth. For them, it's easier to get developed, become the rich.
To resources and also opportunities.
So in that sense, so certain kind of preferential policy for me is still necessary, because otherwise you can perceive the continuing social differentiation.
But then on the other hand, it has been a big debate in the international community as well. Preferential policies isn't necessarily going to help with respect for all different kinds of ethnic groups and cultures and races. This is also, of course, a debate going on not only here in China, even in the United States, right?
Yes, right.
So, Professor Wang, what do the local community think about this? On the one hand, they can receive it with one hand, but do they feel that they, in a way, was being treated with respect?
Yes.
And also, after receiving these preferential policies, are they going to using other possibilities and social resources to make full use of these preferential policies? It's also a big question mark.
Yes, right. That's why we need to develop the new concept of the social inequality. Because basically, when we talk about the equality, we talk about the equality of opportunity, right? But from the beginning, the basic condition is different for the people. So in that sense, we need to create the certain kind of condition for the equality of opportunity. There's a certain kind of precondition there is necessary. So the second, the people, now we talk about these were the preferential policy based on the idea of equality of redistribution. Give you more, right? The central government invest more. It's high, very high. And also now they also had a certain kind of mutual support that from the inland cities like Guangzhou to the Kashgar or some other cities to the Urumqi or some these kind of the local supports from there that with the regulation from the central governments, huge support that's based on the idea of the redistribution actually. But the real issue is that whether or not these kind of the development, the idea of equality, can be realized through the equality of the capability for the local people, which means that the local people are able to involving actively rather than passively.
Only on the receiving side.
Receiving side. So that we talk about the dignity or the respect with the respect, which means that you need to create a certain kind of the social condition for create that kind of the capability.
In fact, the local people have also
this.
been speaking out, in
Yes.
fact. Some, as far as I know, during the pre-communication for today, we were talking about some of the professors in Xinjiang.
Yes.
They try to, with their own local culture, wake up the crowd and
right.
say, let's go to our roots and find out our own strengths. And tell us more about that.
Yeah, a lot of, the Xinjiang, it's a lot of the ethnic groups, especially like Uygur and Kazakhs and so on and so forth. They had their very long tradition and the colorful cultural legacy. At the same time, now the governments encourage in the education system, for example, they encourage the bilingual education.
Right.
That I think it's
mainly Mandarin and also their local language.
Yes, right.
Ethnic language.
It's a very important move. However, basically still in the given condition of the market, for example, that for the minority people, they thought that it's necessary for them to study the Mandarin Chinese. But for the local Chinese, they are not necessary to study the ethnic language, the local language, other languages. So in that sense, the real issue is not only ask for the change for the ethnic, the minorities, but also the majority, whether or not majority need to know more the local culture and the local language and so on and so forth, especially, I think, for the cadres. Because we know that now the problem came from the lacking of the information for the local government policy making, because they don't know they don't know what happened in the local community. That's why now the government asked the huge amount of cadres to live within the villages. However, it's very few of them can speak. For the Han Chinese, the few of them can speak the Uygur and the local languages. So that was also very difficult. So in that sense, in order to the mutual respect, we also need to have the mentality to study the local culture.